Different's great, but being different for the sake of being different, I'm not a big fan of, right? If you just want to be different for the sake
technology
of it.
Technology, I would hide behind it.
And you start to hear some of their challenges, and yes.
Because it speaks to the core of who you are and what drives you forward. Because what makes you different is what drives you. All right, welcome everybody to the Master Connector Show. I'm Rob Genovesi. I'm one of your co-hosts for today. And look, I hope you're joining us every single Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, because we are bringing you some of the best in their fields of people who are connecting, making things happen, accomplished people who are coming to teach you and give you stories and experiences that will help you level up. This was important in my own life. You know, Steve and I go back about 27 years. We're two introverts, two former shy guys who really didn't talk to people, and I would shy away. And Steve got a couple of black belts in the martial arts. I think he'd sooner give you a roundhouse kick than talk to you. But look, we overcome that junk. And today, you know, we're running this show. We're both networkers. We're both making things happen. And it's all about the skills we learned along the way. But you're not going to just learn from us. Like I said, we're bringing you the best of the best so you can learn from other people. Connect with them on LinkedIn, follow them, you know, maybe download their programs or take their courses, because this is all about leveling up in order to accomplish what you want to accomplish. Now, like I said, you know, Steve and I go way back, but look, we've come a long way and we want to help you bring you on this journey. So look, mark your calendars for every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Go to masterconnector.show, because we've got a listing of all the upcoming guests right through the summer, but we are booked out to the end of the year, and we'll constantly be updating that website so you can see, you know, look, there's topics on there that might hit you just right. And maybe you can't tune in every week because you're busy making things happen, but you can pick and choose which one you want to tune in for. Bring your questions, bring your experiences. We want to hear you in the chat. This is an interactive show. But look, I'm not going to delay any further. I want to bring him on the show. Look, we're Master Connector. I'm a Master Connector, but he is the Master Connector. Please welcome my co-host, Mr. Steve Spiro. What's up, Steve?
What's up, Robbie G? You're a Master Connector because you're on the show with us. But no, in general, obviously, we have a lot of similarities, as you said, and we've been able to learn from the same kind of mentors, and just you know, I respect and appreciate who and what you've become, and the journey has been wild. So. But what's going on, friends? Steve Spiro, the Master Connector, coming at you live and direct. And this is going to be a great show. And so what I want you to do, I know Rob, you know, set this up nicely. Definitely make sure you're in the comments connecting with each other, right? I see, you know, John Braden's in the house. Good to see you, John. But, you know, get in there. Tell us where you're from, what city, what state, what country, right? Where, you know, and connect with each other. Tell each other what you do, and make sure you connect offline. The magic in networking. We'll talk about this. Magic is in the follow-up, right? Obviously, we have Yolanda here. We appreciate you, Yolanda. But yeah, we're gonna have a fun time. And so here's what I want to talk about, right? The science of networking, right, delves into the intricate ways our brains are wired for social connections. You know, a trait evolved from our ancestors. I'm reading a really, really good book called Leaders Eat Last, and by Simon Sinek. And yes, that topic, the title is cool, but he gets into so much other stuff and talks a lot about how we were, you know, we kind of came up, you know, thousands of years ago in tribes and all that, and the need for cooperation and community. And that's where a lot of this we're going to speak about, right? You know, studies reveal that effective networking relies on the principles of reciprocity and mutual benefit, tapping into fundamental human psychology. You know, mastering nonverbal cues like body language, eye contact, and enhances networking successes by fostering trust and rapport. And I'm a big digital guy. I love social media. I love specifically networking through LinkedIn. I do like virtual networking. I go to a couple every week, but there's nothing better than being front and center in person with people, right? Getting to see their body language. Now, you could do some of that on a screen, and that, by the way, it's, in my opinion, magnified and so forth. But very important, right? But the 6 degrees of separation, we've all heard the Kevin Bacon game and all, right? But the concept underscores our extensive interconnectedness, just a big word, right? Showcasing the power of networks in personal and professional realms. Cognitive science suggests that storytelling during networking can create lasting impressions and facilitate stronger bonds through shared experience. Another book I just finished, which is Introvert's Edge to Networking. What a great book in terms of coming up with your story. Anyway, additionally, research indicates that maintaining diverse networks with connections spanning various backgrounds and industries leads to more innovative ideas and greater opportunities. So we're going to delve into all that today. So if you're ready, again, we're a community of participants, not LinkedIn lurkers, and it looks like Trevor Smith is joining us from Atlanta, Georgia. I think that's what it says. Good to see you, Daniel. I'm not going to tempt your last name, but great to have you here from Ohio. Great having everyone here. But if you're ready, because we're LinkedIn participants, not LinkedIn lurkers, so type in hashtag Let's Go. And Robbie G, I'm going to pass it to you to introduce our amazing guest.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, let's go, everybody. Let's not delay this any further because I'm excited to hear from our next guest. Frank Agin works to empower small businesses to achieve more by helping them create dynamic professional relationships. He does this by operating a membership-based referral program called Spiro Business Connection, where he shares insightful content via his podcasts, articles, and his book, The Giving Journal. Please welcome to the show, Frank Agin. Hey, Frank.
Hey, how we doing? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the show, Frank.
We are honored.
This is big time. You guys are big time. You know that.
We're big time because we have you on the show. Now we're really big time.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay.
I appreciate it. Well, everyone's saying let's go. So let's go, right? They want to hear from you, man. It's okay. Exciting. So we're going to dig right into this, right? So I want community, type in hashtag principles, right? So, obviously I know you're the same as me and Rob. We're big principle-based people. We were mentored by principle-based leaders. So making sure you're operating with integrity and honor and the right kind of character, right? But I want to ask you this, right? This is a slightly different spin on that word principles, but how has the science of human interaction evolved over the centuries, and what key principles remain unchanged?
Yeah, that's a great question. I loved your intro, Steve, talking about Simon Sinek's book, it's a great book, and he delves a lot into the science. Somebody on my podcast relayed a story to me about Margaret Mead. Margaret Mead is a famous anthropologist, and she was teaching a class, and one of the students asked, "What was the first sign of civilization for humans? When did you know that there was something different about this species?" And she gathered herself to answer, and people are thinking, okay, it's clay pots, it's fires, maybe it's weapons, whatever, something along the lines. And her answer was a healed femur. Now, the femur is the bone that connects the knee to the hip. Most mammals have a femur. And for most mammals, when that femur breaks, it's a death sentence. You can't move. You can't protect yourself. You can't get water. You can't get food. You are going to either die a slow, agonizing death or a quick death at the hand of a predator. But she went on to explain that when we came across humans that had a healed femur, we knew that there was something different. We knew there was something different about these people, about us, I guess is what it is. And if you stop and think about it for a second, let's say there are 4 people and somebody breaks their femur. This is a brutal time in history. And the more people you had, the better off you were. If there was one group of people that just left that person behind and said, sorry about your luck, you're on your own, they move forward as 3 people. And if you're a hockey fan, playing shorthanded is not good. And so 3 people moving forward is not as strong as 4. And eventually 3 is going to become 2, and then they're going to become 1, and eventually none, because you couldn't survive on your own in those times. But if you made the decision to stay behind, if you made the decision to say, you know what, Rob, you are important to me. I don't exactly know why, but there's a feeling inside me that's just telling me I need to stay with you and make sure that you're okay. And I need to get you through this so we can move forward. If I did that, a couple things would happen. One, you would move forward with me, and we wouldn't be three of us, but there would be four of us, and four is much stronger than three. And so our chances of survival would be much greater. But the other thing that would happen is that I would build, and Steve, you kind of hit on it, I would build a sense of reciprocity. You would want to do the same for me. If something happens to Frank, I want to do the same thing. So you look at these two tribes, the one tribe that's going to move forward, and the other one's going to stay behind and care for people. Who's going to survive? Well, it's the gene pool of the people that cared about one another that survived. So when we talk about principles and the evolution of principles, somewhere along the way, there were people who had this principle of I'm going to care for other people. And then that grew into bigger communities because you wanted to, hey, let's just bring together all the people who care about one another. And I tell people, I don't care what your race is. I don't care what your politics is. I don't care who you love. I don't care any of that stuff. I don't care about gender. That DNA is in our system. And we are really hardwired to help one another. Sometimes greed gets in the way, and there are examples of maybe that's not the case, but push comes to shove, we want to help each other.
Yeah, Simon Sinek does a great job in that book, speaking about leveraging. Like he talks about oxytocin and all the different chemicals that our body produces when we do certain things, and why chemically, scientifically, we operate best when we care about each other versus just sort of operate independently. And that's why we don't know the result, right? We are still sort of seeing what the result of digital social media is and how it affects on. We're seeing kids now that are, there's a lot of suicide going on with kids. But we're going to see what happens through this isolated digital world where everything's remote and what that's going to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because it's the community that really, creates the bonds and loyalty. And it's hard to do that digitally, right? So.
Well, it is. I look at social media. My use for social media is this, right? I want to, Steve, you and I didn't know each other. We connected. Hey, let's talk.
Right.
We have a connection. We've never met. We may never meet face to face. But that's okay. There's a kind of a kinship between us. And, now Rob's in the circle as well.
That's right.
No,
I want
to highlight, because what you said, Frank, really teed it up in my mind when you said, when I stop for you, Rob, because you might be hurt or whatever, and help you, we move forward. And, you never know when there's going to be a time where that situation gets flip-flopped. When I first started out in business, I spent over 25 years in corporate, where it was almost like kill or be killed. And there was a lack of teamwork in general. I hadn't experienced a lot of teamwork there. So when I went out on my own, I didn't want to have a partner. I didn't want to work with anybody because I wanted to make my decisions my way, move fast. And that's what I was going to do. And what I really, maybe intellectually, I did understand it, but emotionally and realistically, I didn't understand that I couldn't really move forward very far without other people, because once I started collaborating, that's when things really started to happen. I got feedback from people like Steve where, oh, I didn't see that. We have the blind spots. Oh, I can fix that. Or, we can leverage each other's time and skill sets, because, I'm good at some things, but I'm not good at everything. And that's where Steve might fill in the gap. So that really, tweaked me in the head when you said we move forward, because I think that was key. Because you could have gone on without me, right? But you didn't.
Yeah, no.
Very true. Yeah, and I know you're talking about martial arts, but the tweaking you in the head is not a punch or a roundhouse in the head. We're talking about just gonna.
That's where Steve's head goes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of which, and I want to get on the next topic, but I have a background in the martial arts. Before that, I did tennis, and before that, I was chess, and I was that single person sport. I was like, if it's to be, it's up to me. And I started to realize that if you truly want to have an enriched life, you need to have community. You need to create connection. You need to make impact on others. That's what I found for myself, and it's what I speak on when I'm asked to speak on stage, because it's real that's connection. That's why I wanted to not be considered the master networker, but the master connector, because true human connection is so true. And a big part of that is trust, right? Is developing trust. And so community, type in hashtag trust, but I want to ask you this question. So why is small talk crucial in the initial stages of building trust in professional relationships? And maybe can you share personal anecdote where discovering commonalities help you form a significant connection?
Let me just share what it's the science of networking. Let me share a little science. There was a study that was done in Poland, and they put a young woman on the street, and she was tasked with talking to 100 other women who were walking alone, just trying to reduce all the variables. Don't worry about men. Don't worry about women walking in groups. Approach women individually. And with half the people, the control group, she would go up to the person and say, "Would you buy a candle from me?" That's all she would say. 50 women, all done at random. And then with the other 50, she would go up and she would say, "How's your day going?" And they would respond, "I'm having a good day," or "I'm having a bad day." And she would respond in kind. The researcher would respond in kind with, "I'm glad you're having a good day," or "I'm sorry you're having a bad day. Would you buy a candle from me?" In the 50 women, the control group that she just went up and said, "Hey, would you buy a candle from me?" She sold 3 candles. In the experimental group, she sold 11, almost a 4-fold increase. Now, they go on in the research paper and they talk about it. And our brains do lots of things, but one of the things our brains does is this thing called heuristic processing. And that's just a fancy word for shortcuts. And your hashtag is trust, #trust. The most important thing we ever did, the most important thing we ever do as humans is make a determination as to whether we can trust somebody. It could be a life and death decision back in the day, right? Is this person going to wait for me if I break my femur? Today it's still an important decision. It might not be life or death, but geez, is Steve the guy to do this podcast with? And so we need to make this determination. And what heuristic processing does is it kind of shortcuts it. And our brains are basically saying, you know what, this person just engaged me in conversation. I think I can trust them. Obviously, you need to be genuine about it. But that just underscores, the importance of small talk. A personal anecdote. I'm sorry. I have so many, Steve, but I can tell you right now, so many, it's hard to choose. When somebody gets me on the phone and it's right down to brass tacks, that's going nowhere. They're trying to sell me, or I'm trying to, it just goes nowhere. But I've had some great conversations with some people where we have a half hour booked. We end up going 50 minutes, and the last 5 minutes is, "Okay, yeah, what do you got? Yeah, that's great. Let's do business."
No doubt.
It was all talking about kids and, tennis or martial arts or whatever it might be. But they built that rapport. It's like, yeah, we get each other. Let's make this happen. So small talk.
Yeah, I want to kind of piggyback off what you were saying. I was heard a story of a gentleman who was hanging out at a Starbucks, and he had this idea. I think it was a financial planner. I want to say, or maybe insurance. I can't remember. And he put up a little 10 card. It said, "Ask me about insurance," or "Ask me about financial planning." And he had nobody came over. And then he said, and it said, "And I'll give you 10, I'll buy a coffee." Nobody. But then he wrote in, "Tell me your story and I'll treat you for a cup of coffee." And he had like
a line out
tons
the door.
of people coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to tell their story. And, it's funny. I think I told the community of the show a few weeks ago, but I had a guy who came on. We were doing a networking call, a connecting call, and he started with, "Hey, listen, I'm a bottom line guy. Let's just get right to it. Who could I refer you to?" He didn't even know my story, none of it. And he's like, and I'm like, "I'd love to hear your story." And he's like, and he was really brief with the story. He barely told me his story. He basically told me the story about what he does right now, and it was in a 20-second story.
Yeah.
And consequently, it wasn't very productive. But I agree with you. And when I get on these calls, and we, as I like to say, and I share this on stage a lot, where you're letting the two kids play in the sandbox and get to know each other, and then we could start talking, eventually as adults about business. But let's get to know each other. Let's build some commonalities, some trust. Super important.
So I have a question for you, Frank, on
Please.
the note of what you guys were just saying, because I've met guys like Steve is talking about. Look, there's all kinds of people in the world, right? And some people
Yep.
just they want to get right to it, because I've heard plenty of people say, I just hate small talk. Now, that may be true. They hate it, but can you give some advice to those people? Not just about the importance of small talk, but maybe they don't really understand how to transition. Maybe they feel a little uncomfortable talking about small talk or talking about themselves before they can get to the business or their message. How do they segue or transition from, you know, tell me your story to business, or do you even?
That's a great question. What I tell people the key to small talk is getting the other person talking about themselves. That's the key. People are apprehensive. I don't know what I'm going to say. Don't worry about saying anything. Ask them. Steve's already talked about it. Hey, tell me your story. How did you become a financial advisor? You were studying to be a priest and now you're a financial advisor. What's the story here? Probably involves a woman, or whatever. People love to tell a story. And what ends up happening usually is that it turns into, they turn the tables on you. Well, tell me your story, because we like to reciprocate. I'll give you an example. I was at a networking event. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. We get snow like New York gets snow. It snowed. I just got into this networking event. It was not harrowing, but it wasn't fun getting there. I got there and was engaged in a conversation with somebody. You always start with the weather. What do you think about this snow? And she said, I love it. I love it. I'm a big skier. Well, that's all I needed. I grew up in Michigan. I understand skiing. We talked about skiing and, back and forth and where she skied and where they were going and all sorts of stuff like that. And that just led to me just saying very naturally, well, skiing's expensive. What do you do to pay for it? So that kind of brought in business. We talked a little bit about business, and when I'm at an event, I'm not going to dominate somebody's time. I don't want to stand with somebody the whole time either. I just said, if you don't get hurt on the ski hill this weekend, I'd love to have coffee with you next week, right? I'm just kind of reflecting back. I listened to what you were saying. So there's a little bit of an art to it. And I tell people with respect to small talk, do a couple of things. Think about it. Just think about it. You're driving around, turn the radio off. Think about how small talk might happen. Listen to other people when you're at events, or listen to other people having small talks. I have friends who are great at it, right? And I've learned a lot. And then the other thing is practice. You're at the grocery store, you're checking out, engage somebody in that little 10-second interchange, right? Oh, you have a cute accent. Where are you from? Well, how did you get here? That's neat. Have a good day. But you just kind of get comfortable with it in time.
Love that.
Well, that's how we started out, Steve, right? The grocery store. It's like,
yeah,
that was our mentors said, go to grocery store, stand in line. Whoever is standing behind you, say something like that. I mean, that's how we started out.
Break the ice. It's my formula is break the ice. Where you from? What do you do? And we should stay in touch. That's my formula. But with all those different little pieces, the key is to dig in deeper. So why did you move to Charlotte? Where'd you come from originally? Why'd you move? Oh, do you live in the suburbs? Whatever. And you can just dig 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 layers on each of those topics, and there you go. Now you built a strong relationship. But good stuff. Well, hey, we want to move on here. We want to get as much as we can in the little short time we have with you, Frank. So we want to talk about being effective. So community, type in #effective, because to me, all this is talk, but we want results. We want it to be effective. So tell us, if you would, Frank, what role does volunteering play in jumpstarting one's networking efforts, and why is it so effective?
Yeah, one of the questions I always get when I'm on interviews, what's the one thing I could be doing now, or in the immediate term to make this happen? And I consistently say, find something you care about and go volunteer in your community. Your schools need help. Your community needs help. The library, somebody, homelessness, pet charities, go and volunteer. And, it gets back to the whole, people get to see that, hey, this, Rob cares about this. I might not care about it, but I love the fact he cares about something and he's making the community better. He's waiting for somebody with a healed femur, metaphorically, right? He's contributing to the community. And so I feel better about him. But with respect to volunteering, when you get out and volunteer, we seldom volunteer all by ourselves. We're coming out of our little corner of the world, behind our desk and sitting in our chair all day to really work elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder with people who care about the same thing. And you don't even have to talk about it, what you do. Steve, it's great been working with you. What is it that you do? Or they'll go back and they'll look you up on LinkedIn and they'll figure it out. Hey, I saw on LinkedIn, you're the master connector. Can you tell me more about that? And they've teed you up and you haven't had to pitch yourself or do anything.
I love it.
I've experienced in networking that, I've talked about this before, and I'd like to hear more people talk about this who have credibility, and that's the likability factor. Because, heavily in networking, I would meet in my area, a dozen and a half, 24 financial planners, life insurance people, business coaches. And so how do I decide, all things being equal, say they're all equally good at what they do, I'm going with the person I like. And when we hear effective, think a lot of people wouldn't associate likability with effectiveness. But I remember meeting a guy early on, and I was broke, and I didn't have any money. My household didn't have money. I got 4 kids, 2 of them in college. I started my own business. I was broke, and I met a bunch of financial planners. And I remember there was one, and I said, I'm not ready yet, but when I am, I'm hiring this guy. I liked him so much. He's really good. But I liked him so much that anybody I met after that, and it was 2.5, 3 years later, when things started picking up, I went back to him. So was him, and by the way, he would sit with me, he would teach me stuff, not charge me. So he was effective in giving first. He was very likable. That's an effective strategy, I would say. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They talk about in networking that you need to give to get. And people always conjure up images of pulling money out of their pocket. And it's like, no, there's so many things we can do for other people beyond, sending them business or giving them money.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I want to acknowledge Yolanda had a good point here, which kind of relates, right? Small talk can help you appear approachable, friendly, and confident. And then Marcus, good to see you, Marcus. They got to know you, trust you, and like you. And it's so true, right? People do business like that. They don't do business with the other types, right? So we are really man, we're over at 127 already. We have a goal to try to get this the show done by 1:30, and it's just so incredible. The content that you bring it to the table here. Rob, I think you wanted to chat a little bit about his promo, right?
Yeah. So listen, audience, this is why you want to tune in every single week, because when we bring guests, a lot of them will bring something more to the table. You are getting their expert advice, experience, training for nothing. And then on top of it, we got Frank here, who's going to give you something for nothing. But I want to say not for nothing, for your interaction, for your presence today, for being a part of what we're building here, and hopefully passing on the word about the Master Connect show. But Frank, tell our audience about what you got for them.
Yeah, I wrote a book several years ago called The Giving Journal. And it was really talks about my journey to becoming more generous. And it's only about 40 or so pages. And I'm very, very passionate about people becoming generous. And so in the spirit of that, I give the book away for free. You have the link. If you share out the link, I'm not even collecting people's email addresses. I'm not harvesting or anything. Just download the book. Anybody can have it free of charge.
We love that. We appreciate that. So as we're closing down here, Frank, what's the best way for the community to reach out to you? And do you have any final thoughts or anything else you want to share?
The best way to reach out to me is if you go to frankagin.com, my email's there, my LinkedIn's there. I'll meet people where they want to be met. If they want to talk on Facebook, great. Email's my thing, but my preference. Nothing happens until you take action. That's my final thought. Every show you guys do, there's great insight. If you just listen and don't do anything, nothing's going to come from it. Take action on something today or whatever you hear.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. I appreciate that. Well, really, really appreciate you coming on the show. It's going to put you in the green room, but thanks again for all that you brought to the show today. We appreciate you. Make sure you reach out to Frank. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Frank.
And want to thank the community, right? And we appreciate you all. You know, we are doing this show for you, and so next week we're not going to have a show. We're skipping for 4th of July weekend. Hopefully you'll celebrate what this amazing country is about and the freedoms. And if you're not from the U.S., that's okay. But I believe that the U.S. has been a beacon of light to the world, right? So so make sure you celebrate and understand why freedom is true, why we have freedoms and the sacrifice that many have made for it. But we are going to be regrouping on July 10th. And that topic is understanding communication and communicating your purpose with Alana Spara. Okay, not to be confused with Spiro. A lot of people call me Spiro. They like Sparrow. They think my name is Sparrow. But Alana Sparrow is going to be on with us next week. And if you're interested in being a sponsor of the show, go to masterconnector.show, and you could also see, as Rob said, the upcoming episodes. But I want to end here with something specifically to close with. Right, I want to tell you a story. I'll tell you a story of Carla Harris, Vice Chairman and Managing Director of Morgan Stanley. Earlier in her career, Carla volunteered for, talk about volunteering, right? Volunteered for several community and professional organizations where she networked extensively. Her dedication and the relationship she built through these volunteer efforts led to her gaining mentorship, sponsorship, and numerous opportunities within the financial industry, propelling her to become one of Wall Street's most powerful and influential women. Her story highlights how strategic networking and giving back to the community can open up doors to extraordinary career achievements. Remember, folks, let's leverage our network. Not only can you perhaps change your life, but who knows, who else can you impact? Let's make sure to be that light. See you next week.
And you start to hear some of their challenges, and yes,
because it speaks to the core of who you are and what drives you forward. Because what makes you different is what drives you.